Check this out.
Oh!
That's another 40.04.
432.17 ounces.
When Rick Ness stumbled upon a massive abandoned mining machine deep in the wilderness, he had no idea he was about to uncover one of the richest gold finds in history. This wasn't just an old relic, it was a forgotten beast, left behind for reasons more shocking than you'd believe. Was it part of a lost operation, a cover-up, or something even deeper, tied to ancient secrets? Get ready, because this story rewrites everything you thought you knew about gold mining. And before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a discovery this big. Let's dig in. Right in front of Rick stood a massive, rusted TRL, buried in the wild, covered in dirt and vines, and overflowing with gold worth $500 million. This forgotten machine had been hiding a fortune for who knows how long. How could something this valuable be left behind, untouched, as if it were worthless junk? Tune in, because the truth behind this abandoned gold mine is the confirmation of ancient, hidden civilizations, digging up the past to change the future. The massive TRL, a hulking piece of mining equipment, had been swallowed by the land, covered in grime, vines, and years of neglect. Built for pure strength, this was no delicate modern contraption. It was a raw powerhouse designed to rip through tons of material daily, spitting out gold like an ATM. Back then, mining technology was primitive compared to today's standards. The finer gold, tiny yet incredibly valuable, often slipped through undetected, tossed aside as worthless debris. But today, that so-called waste is now worth more than entire mining operations. And here's the twist. This forgotten treasure wasn't just lost to time, it was intentionally left behind. Why? The answer might shock you more than the gold itself. Before we get deeper, here's a quick glimpse of what's been happening this season. Rick knew this wasn't just about a rusty machine or leftover scraps of gold. Something bigger was buried here. For years, whispers had circulated about a mysterious mining outfit that vanished without warning. Rumors of drained finances, backroom deals gone wrong, and an eerie silence that followed. Now, standing before this massive, rusting machine, Rick knew those weren't just tall tales. They were real. And he had just uncovered the truth. But bringing this giant back to life wasn't going to be simple. You can't just haul a multi-ton TRL out of the wilderness like it's some barn find. The team had to evaluate every inch, what was broken, what could be fixed, and most importantly, whether it could still uncover gold. And then came the real shock. As they started digging around the machine, they hit pay dirt, literally. The untouched soil surrounding it was rich in gold, not flakes, not hints. This was some of the highest grade gold Rick had ever encountered in his career. It wasn't just a lucky find. It was a gold mine waiting to be claimed. But there was one big problem. You don't uncover this much gold and expect the world to just watch quietly. From the very first scoop, it was clear something major was happening. Man, Rick is probably the most motivated I've ever seen him. This is the old Rick, just sharper, more focused. Word spread fast, and not everyone was thrilled. Jealous rivals, old enemies, maybe even shadows from the past began circling. Some wanted a share, others wanted it shut down. The clock was ticking. The team had to act quickly. They set up a processing plant on site, blending tried-and-true mining techniques with modern precision tools, making sure not a single grain of gold slipped through. And then, the gold started pouring in. Day after day, the numbers climbed, faster than anyone expected. What started as a forgotten patch of dirt was now generating jaw-dropping returns. But that wasn't all. While combing through old records and maps, they stumbled onto something even more stunning, documents suggesting this wasn't just a one-off location. This TRL wasn't an isolated machine. It was part of a larger operation, possibly one of many. A hidden network of abandoned mining sites, each with its own buried fortune. These weren't just campfire stories anymore. They were leads, clues pointing to a vast, forgotten gold empire. Reviving the TRL wasn't just about getting it up and running again. It became a mission to uncover the past, to reconstruct a puzzle lost to time. Every rusted part, every bent bolt held a piece of that mystery. Experts were brought in to handle delicate restorations. One mistake, and the entire machine and its secrets could be lost forever. But when the beast finally roared back to life, it was like watching history breathe again. And just when they thought they'd seen it all, the team found something hidden deep in the old mining records. Something far more personal. A glimpse into the lives of the men who once chased their dreams in this unforgiving land. They weren't just miners, they were pioneers, fighters, people who risked everything chasing a glimmer of hope in the dirt. Suddenly, this wasn't just about gold anymore. It was about legacy, about reconnecting with a forgotten chapter of history, one written in sweat, sacrifice, and unshakable ambition. That rusted machine. It was never just equipment. It was a time capsule. And now, it had finally been opened. Then came the real shock. This wasn't just an old hunk of rusted metal. It was a TRL, a massive, purpose-built machine engineered to extract gold straight from the earth. And it had been left to rot for years, mistaken for worthless scrap. But those who truly understood what they were looking at saw something else, potential. If something this powerful had been forgotten, what else had people missed? How many fortunes had been walked over, ignored, or buried by time? The gold rush might have faded into history, but the truth is, treasure doesn't disappear. It just waits. Finding the TRL was only the beginning. The real question now was, could it still do what it was built to do, dig up gold that everyone else left behind? And once word got out, the buzz exploded. Experts, miners, historians, everyone had something to say. Was it salvageable? Could it be brought back to life? And most of all, how much gold was trapped in the untouched sediment it had once processed? Curiosity quickly turned into obsession. This wasn't just about reviving a forgotten machine anymore. This was about challenging everything people thought they knew about old mining sites. If the TRL could run again and produce gold, it would prove that these so-called dead zones were actually hidden gold fields, just waiting for a second chance. But before any of that could happen, the team hit their biggest obstacle yet, getting the TRL out of the ground. It wasn't just old, it was enormous. You don't just pull something like that out with a chain and a prayer. It had to be carefully excavated, lifted, transported, and restored, all while avoiding damage, delays, and sky-high costs. One wrong move, and the whole project could collapse. But the deeper they got, the more it became clear. They weren't just moving a machine. They were digging up a lost chapter of mining history. And once that TRL was finally pulled free from its grave of dirt and decay, the real mission began. This wasn't just about repairing broken parts. It was about transforming a forgotten relic into something even more powerful than it was before, breathing new life into a legend thought to be long gone. Years of corrosion were stripped away, gears were replaced, engines modernized. What was once a slow, outdated machine turned into a high-powered gold-extracting monster. Notice them scar there, oring through there? Man, I don't know how I didn't notice that. I wonder what the hell those holes are there for. I don't know. They must have had something bolted to it in the past. Advanced sensors, automation, and real-time tracking made it more efficient than anything miners had back in the day. They weren't just bringing the TRL back to life. They were turning it into something no one had ever seen before. And then came the numbers, the kind that made jaws drop. By the time the machine was running at full capacity, The team had already pulled out a shocking amount of gold. No one expected it. But the sheer volume proved one thing loud and clear. Miners of the past had left behind more than just stories. They had unknowingly abandoned riches buried in the very ground they walked away from. The TRL was no longer just a relic. It was a money-printing machine, proof that forgotten mines still held value in ways no one had imagined. What followed next was inevitable. With gold flowing, interest exploded. People started looking at old mines differently. If one forgotten machine could bring in millions, what else was out there? Could other pieces of discarded equipment still have life left in them? The mining industry started shifting. Suddenly, abandoned sites weren't seen as useless anymore. They were potential gold mines, waiting for someone smart enough to see past the rust. Of course, success doesn't come without setbacks. Keeping the TRL running wasn't just about modernizing it. It was about understanding how to balance old engineering with new technology. Problems popped up constantly, from mechanical failures to environmental concerns. But the team was relentless. Every challenge was met with a solution. Every breakdown was just another step toward making the machine better. This wasn't just a gamble anymore. It was a full-fledged revolution in mining. Drones entered the picture next, mapping out gold-rich areas with a level of precision that old-school prospectors could only dream of. High-resolution images revealed exactly where to dig, removing all the guesswork from the process. With the TRL and drone technology working together, gold recovery became faster, smarter, and more. The past and the future had collided, and the result was a method of mining that changed the game entirely. At this point, there was no denying it. What started as an abandoned hunk of metal had turned into one of the biggest gold mining success stories in recent history. The TRL wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a symbol of what could be done when people dared to look beyond the obvious. It proved that opportunity isn't always found in new ideas. Sometimes it's hiding in old, forgotten places, just waiting for someone with enough vision to see its true worth. The machine was finally running, but no one was ready for how much gold it was about to find. An old machine just changed mining forever. The day finally arrived to fire up the TRL, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. This wasn't just about running an old machine, it was a full-blown gamble. The moment the massive drum started spinning, dirt and debris poured in, and within minutes, gold began flowing out. And not just a little, a shocking amount. The numbers were mind-blowing, pulling in millions in gold, far beyond what anyone had expected. The machine that had been written off as an outdated hunk of metal had just proved everyone wrong in the biggest way possible. What happened next sent shockwaves through the mining industry. If an old, abandoned piece of equipment could pull this off, what else had been left behind? It was a loud and clear message. Maybe the mining world had been too quick to toss out the past in favor of expensive high-tech machines. The TRL wasn't just making money. It was exposing a flaw in the industry's way of thinking. And it didn't take long for people to start digging through records, looking for other forgotten machines that might be hiding untapped riches. But let's not pretend this was all about nostalgia. The real takeaway here was that mining didn't have to mean destruction. By upgrading an old machine instead of building a new one, the team had drastically cut down on waste. The TRL was running cleaner, pulling more gold, and proving that mining didn't have to come at the planet's expense. That alone had people talking. Miners, engineers, environmentalists. Everyone wanted to know what was next. Of course, not everything was perfect. Something was off with the gold distribution. One side was producing more than the other. That raised some red flags. Was something wrong with the TRL? Or worse, was something happening beneath the surface that they hadn't accounted for? You have a problem with the sluicer, so you have a feed direction problem, or a chute that's blocked off down in the distributor or something. Something's going on. When you're dealing with millions of dollars in gold, those kinds of questions need answers fast. The success of this project sparked something even bigger. Prospectors, miners, and historians alike were suddenly obsessed with old mining equipment, searching archives for blueprints, schematics, and abandoned sites. The industry, which had spent years chasing the newest and most expensive solutions, was now looking backward, wondering what they had overlooked. What else was hidden under decades of rust and dust? But this was more than a treasure hunt. It was a new way of thinking. If the past still had value, what other mining methods had been thrown away too soon? Could mining become more sustainable, more efficient, and more profitable all at the same time? The TRL was more than just a lucky break. It was a warning shot to an industry that had gotten too comfortable with its own methods. The TRL's transformation wasn't just about recovering gold, it was a direct challenge to old-school thinking. The belief that mining had to rip through the land, leaving destruction in its wake, was outdated. The TRL had managed to produce massive amounts of gold while keeping environmental damage to a minimum. It wasn't just efficient, it was revolutionary. And if this machine could do it, why weren't others following the same path? As the news spread, mining companies started reevaluating their own operations. Were they wasting potential profits by ignoring older equipment? So there's a lot of pressure on revenue right now. We haven't had that sort of pressure in a while. But with 2 plants running, we have a chart. Was their expensive modern machinery really worth the cost when something decades old was outperforming it? The TRL had forced a reckoning, and no one wanted to be the last to adapt. And then came the real test, long-term viability. This wasn't about a single good run. Could the TRL keep up its performance, or was this just a fluke? The team doubled down, refining the system, adjusting processes, and making sure every ounce of gold was accounted for. Meanwhile, word spread beyond just miners. Investors, environmental groups, and even government agencies started paying attention. The TRL wasn't just making money, it was proving that mining didn't have to be as destructive as it had always been. That's when things really took off. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just about one machine. Across the region, abandoned mining equipment was being reassessed. What if the TRL wasn't the only one with gold still left in it? It was no longer just a mining story. It was an industrial shift. The TRL had changed everything. The TRL was working better than ever. But as they kept digging, they realized they weren't just finding gold. Gold still runs through forgotten land. Then came the next challenge, pushing the TRL even further. Engineers and geologists worked side by side, trying to find ways to improve its efficiency. They dug into its history, analyzing old mining records to see if the TRL had originally been used to its full potential. The answer, not even close. This machine had been retired too soon, abandoned before anyone truly understood what it was capable of. As upgrades continued, something unexpected happened. The TRL started uncovering gold in areas previously thought to be tapped out. Old miners' maps had been wrong. The deposits ran deeper, wider, and richer than anyone had imagined. That realization sent a ripple effect through the industry. What if every old mining site had been abandoned too soon? How much gold had been left behind over the years? At this point, there was no turning back. What had started as a risky experiment had turned into an undeniable success. The TRL was no longer just an old machine. It was a blueprint for the future of mining. A reminder that sometimes the best ideas aren't new at all. They've just been forgotten. As the TRL continued its record-breaking performance, people started looking at mining differently. It wasn't just about chasing gold, it was about questioning assumptions, pushing boundaries, and refusing to accept that something was finished just because it looked old. The past still had value if people were willing to see it. And that's where the real impact of the TRL came in. It wasn't just a successful project, it was a challenge to an entire industry. If one forgotten machine could change everything, Mitch and Tyson have their hands full with 2 plants running. They're right on the edge of keeping up with where we need to be in order to get all the ground mined this season. What else had been overlooked? What other industries were throwing away potential gold mines in disguise? They said the TRL was done. Just another piece of junk rusting away in the middle of nowhere. But now it's a beast. Ripping through dirt like it was built yesterday. Spitting out gold like the past never ended. What was once left to rot is now working harder, faster, and smarter than ever before. This isn't just some lucky break. It's proof that the right mix of grit and brains can turn a scrap heap into a gold mine. The TRL isn't just running, it's roaring, and the whole mining world is paying attention. This old machine isn't just digging up gold, it's digging up ideas, shaking the industry awake. For too long, mining companies have ditched their old tools, writing them off as useless. Parker and his team just flipped the script, proving that these so-called relics still have plenty of fight left in them. The success of this project isn't just about profit. It's a wake-up call to stop wasting potential. And now others are watching, wondering what other abandoned machines could be brought back to life. The ripple effect is massive. From Australia to South America, mining teams are eyeing their own graveyards of forgotten equipment, hoping to pull off the same trick. It turns out the so-called golden age of mining isn't over. It's just been buried under decades of neglect. With the right approach, entire operations can be revived without drilling new holes or wrecking new lands. Instead of throwing millions at new machinery, miners are realizing they can rebuild, reuse, and still strike it rich. And it's not just the mining giants taking notice. Local communities near these sites are buzzing with new energy. Old mining towns that had gone quiet are seeing businesses open back up. Restaurants, hardware stores, and suppliers are feeling the shift. Where there was once dust and silence, there's movement, jobs, and real hope. What started as a simple machine restoration has turned into an economic spark plug, proving that mining doesn't have to be a one-and-done operation. Environmentalists are watching too, and surprisingly, some of them aren't mad. Mining has always been a dirty business, but Parker's team has found ways to do it better. Less waste, smarter processes, a focus on sustainability. This isn't just about making money, it's about changing the game. When people hear mining, they usually picture destruction. But what if it could actually be part of the solution? What if the key to the future isn't in new mines, but in the old ones we've already abandoned? Could this abandoned TRL be the result of a lost fortune, a hidden crime,